Hey everybody, welcome to the next Be Built by Broza, live from Gold's Gym, the Mecca, in the background. On today's show, what I want to do is I want to go back to the basics a little bit and just show some basic movements, maybe one for each upper body part, show you the basic form of a basic movement, and then show you kind of a way that you can tweak it a little bit to just give you something, a variation, a different feeling in the muscle, and maybe just ignite some new growth if you're bored of doing exercises the same basic way. And then we're going to just finish off the show finally with a couple of Ask Merlin questions, which we haven't gotten to do in a while, so I hope you guys enjoy it. Okay, so this is going to be obviously a basic flat dumbbell fly. As you can see, as most people do it, the palms are facing each other at the top. We're coming down slowly in an arc. We get into the full stretch position, and then we're using the strength of the pectorals to squeeze back through that arc into the top position. This is a great movement for the chest, definitely a tried and true movement, but we could do it a different way as well. We could turn the hands so that the palms are facing forward at the top, and this completely changes the feeling that you get in the pecs on the way down. So as you are lowering the dumbbell in the same arc, you want to keep a slight bend in the elbows. You want to again carefully come down to a full stretch. Hold that stretch position for about a second, and then using the power of the pectorals, not the front deltoids, you want to slowly arc back up to the top. Now you don't want to go quite as heavy when you do it in this position because it can be hard on the shoulders, but give it a shot. Okay, so now we have the standard one-arm dumbbell row, like most people do it, with the leg up on the bench, the hand up on the bench, and you're pulling pretty much in a straight line, straight up. Very, very good to work the lats and of course the rear delts as well. And in this movement you go a little bit heavier, and as long as you keep your form strict, you'll be right on the mark. Now, what you want to do in the second movement is what is called a Merlin one-arm dumbbell row. And we're doing it on an incline, as you can see. I'm wrapping the free arm around the bench to stabilize the body. I'm putting my leg back behind me to keep it out of the way, and as you can see, I've grabbed the dumbbell at the top of the dumbbell so that it tips backwards, so you're actually pulling back towards the hip in the same direction of the incline. And this actually will work the lats a little bit more effectively. It's a little bit more strict and isolated, and you can't go as heavy as you can in the standard dumbbell row because it's a very, very strict movement because your body's kept in place, but it's really, really great for working the lats. Give that a try. So this is the basic standing dumbbell side lateral for the side or lateral or medial head of the shoulders. Standing up straight, slight bend in the elbow, keeping the movement strict as we raise the dumbbells out to the sides using the power, again, of the side deltoids. When you get to the top, you want to hold for about a second and then lower under control. Now in the second part of this, I'm showing you an incline version where you're leaning into the incline. And what this is going to do is going to shift some of the emphasis from the side deltoid to side deltoid and posterior deltoid because you're leaning slightly forward. The movement is very, very strict, so I wouldn't go as heavy as I would in the regular side lateral. But again, the same rules apply. Slight bend in the elbow, raising up slowly and strictly till you get to the top. Hold for a second in a controlled negative. Excellent movement for the shoulders. Okay, for the biceps, we have a standing low cable curl with a short straight bar. Very basic movement for the biceps. Standing pretty much straight, slight bend in the knees, keeping the elbows tucked in close to the body. Keep them there the entire set. And you're just going to curl the weight up, obviously in a controlled fashion. Come up to the top, use the power of the cable here where it has resistance against gravity to get a good squeeze. Now in the second movement, what I'm doing is I'm just changing the angle of pull. I'm laying down on a bench and I'm doing a lying low cable curl. It feels a little bit different from start to finish. It's an excellent isolation movement for the biceps, and it just feels different than the regular standard standing curl. So again, you're starting with the arms straight, keeping the elbows tucked into the body, controlled curl to the top, hold that squeeze for a second, and then a controlled negative. A really, really great way to finish off a bicep workout with maximum pump. Okay, one of the most basic movements for triceps is the tricep press down with a straight bar. Pretty much see it every single day in the gyms. Excellent movement to stand straight, slight bend in the torso. As you can see how I do it there. Keep the elbows close to the body, keep them there the entire set. You're gonna press down until full lockout. get a good squeeze in the tricep, and then of course a good negative to the top. Now what we're going to do is what I call a Merlin incline tricep push out, which is actually an interesting movement because it's like a hybrid between a push down and a tricep extension. So we're laying back on an incline bench set at about 45 to 50 degrees, keeping the elbows in close. And as you can see, I'm not pressing down, I'm pressing outward in front of my body, which makes it this hybrid movement of a push down and a push out. I'm going to full lockout. I'm getting a good squeeze on the tricep. I'm doing a controlled negative to the top while making sure my elbows stay in place. This is a really, really great movement for adding mass to the triceps. Give it a shot.
Hi Merlin, what do you got this week?
Okay, so ask Merlin, a couple of questions that I got on my Facebook page. Someone asked me about legs specifically, and he said that he's been training his legs heavy weight, low reps 1 week, and then the second week he's been doing light weights for high reps, but his legs still are not really growing. What's my suggestion? Should I keep going with this pattern, or is there something else I should do? So first way I'm going to answer that question is by saying, if you're doing the same things over and over again and not getting any results, that's really the definition of insanity if you keep doing it. So right away, of course, you need to make a change, unless of course you've only been doing it for a few weeks and then it's ridiculous. But if you've been doing that months or years on end, which a lot of people do, and you're not seeing the results, yeah, it's got to change. So let's look at this a couple different ways. First of all, you have to make sure of the basic things. Number one, how low of reps are you going? Do you mean 6 to 8 or do you mean 2 to 3? You're definitely not going to get any growth out of sets of like 2 to 3 reps. That's like powerlifting. There's not enough time under tension. So if that's your definition of heavyweight, you need to kind of change it a little bit and move up more into like a range of, I would say, 6 to 8. Second thing is on your high rep days, are you just pounding out the reps, or are you doing at least controlled reps, or are they just piston-like reps? Which is not always the most productive way to do things. And as your form, your technique correct, all of these things are going to come into play. But to be a little bit more specific, let's just say you're doing everything pretty much right, and you've been doing this program and it hasn't been working. I would say that what you need to do is you need a little bit more variation than just maybe heavy light. You might want to even try heavy medium light. So in other words, one day is more in the 6 to 8 rep range, one day is more like 10 to 12, one day is maybe 16 to 20, something like that. You could try that. You might also want to stagger it a little bit so that maybe you're doing 2 or 3 weeks in one rep range before switching to the next rep range. So maybe 3 weeks of 6 to 8, then 3 weeks of 10 to 12, and then 3 weeks of 16 to 20. That's another thing you can try.
In the past, you've actually, in the same workout, I remember doing high reps, low reps, high reps, low reps, like
and
for certain body parts.
Yes, that's one of the things that I do in my training, which I just call them high-low days or low-high days, where you can actually combine the two techniques, and it's actually very, very effective, because if you go very, very heavy, that puts a lot of tension on the muscle, causes a lot of fiber damage, and then if you go light in the next exercise and then force a lot of blood in there, number one, that's a complete shock to the system, and number two, after you've damaged those muscle fibers, you're forcing a lot of blood in, which helps to flush out some of the toxins, and then you can go back to heavy again in the light. So that's another technique you can use. And again, you can also mix up the rep ranges within workouts, which is kind of like where my the rep range week of my PRS training program comes in, where I do one exercise maybe in the 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 range, one exercise in the 7 to 9 range, one movement in the 10 to 12 range, and then one movement 13 up to 20. So you can vary the rep ranges in one workout. So basically the takeaway is, I can go on and on with different techniques that you can use. The takeaway is just make a change from what you're doing because it's not working. Try even another rep range, somewhere in between that heavyweight and that really, really lightweight. And just vary your routine a little bit more. Perhaps you need to, if you've been training for a long time, the more variation you use, the better, because your body becomes very, very non-responsive to what you're doing. It becomes very stubborn over time. Or on the other end of the spectrum, maybe you're changing too much. You might want to try staying with a system for 3 or 4 weeks before moving to the next system, and let your body get exhausted on that one system before you make a switch. So you have to use yourself kind of like a lab rat if you don't have a coach. and try different things. Make sure you make notes of what workouts are making you more sore than others, what workouts are giving you better pumps, so that you know that maybe certain things that are more productive for you, and it could have to do with your hormonal or your fiber type makeup, and keep notes, and this way over time you'll become better at training and better at knowing what your body needs. Okay, so this next question was actually asked by a client of mine. His name's Emilio Ruiz from Canada, who himself is actually a very, very talented coach and bodybuilder. And he wanted to know pretty much about my opinion on, I think, looking at the question mostly, working in about a 5-rep range on the basic movements like squats, bench presses, and deadlifts. Is this a good way to produce growth? Which is kind of similar to the other question in a way, but maybe I'll answer a little bit somewhat differently. Listen, the basic movements, I think, for many people are the most productive for growth. I think that people sometimes only working on the basic movements is a mistake especially if you want to be a bodybuilder, and being a bodybuilder means building the most complete physique, making sure that you incorporate all the muscle fibers in a workout so that you can damage as many muscle fibers and create hypertrophy. The great thing about compound lifts, about these basic lifts, is that they involve a lot of body parts. So in other words, when you're doing a deadlift, you may be focusing on your lower back, but of course you're also hitting the quads, the glutes, the hamstrings, the traps, even the forearms. And that has advantages and disadvantages because you're not able to focus as well on the specific body part that you may be working, but you're spreading it over a bunch of body parts. So the good part is, you know, you're getting a lot of muscle groups at one time, so you're using a lot of your anatomy, and you're actually, a lot of the compound lifts are also really good for increasing testosterone production, and of course you can use very, very heavy weights so you can shock the system, but you're not able to isolate as much. So I think you need a combination of these compound lifts and isolation lifts in the same workout for maximum hypertrophy. Now, you did mention the 5-rep range. You know, there's nothing wrong with going down to 5 reps every now and again, but if you're going to try to grow just on 5 reps, you're probably not going to be that successful, because again, the way most people do 5 reps, it's usually a 1 second up, 1 second down type of thing. And that's keeping the muscle under tension for only 10 seconds. Even at best, let's even say you control the negative a little bit and it was 2 seconds down, 1 second up. So that's only about a 15-second set. I've always told people that in order for a muscle to grow maximally, you really need to be under tension at least for about 40 seconds per set. So you're falling way short of that. So if your main goal is hypertrophy, I wouldn't do too much 5-rep range stuff. Even the basic lifts, there's nothing wrong with doing the basic lifts for 12, 15 reps. I mean, it's very, very effective. I mean, even Ronnie Coleman, when he would do, you know, obviously he's a freak of nature, I'm just going to say, even though he lifted so heavy, he normally lifted in the 10, 12, 15 rep range with the heavy weights. So he was still under tension for a decent amount of time. If your goal is hypertrophy, I would, you know, do that every once in a while if you want to, but I wouldn't make that the mainstay of your program. If your goal is more towards a combination of building strength and power or athleticism for a sport, more so than building muscle mass, then the 5-rep range is really, really great, because it, you know, creates a lot of nerve force, it activates the central nervous system, it builds power, explosiveness, and strength, and especially these compound lifts require balance and stabilization, so they're very, very important for sporting technique, for sporting activities. So it depends on what your goal is. Now, I know you are probably asking more specifically for bodybuilding, so I would say include some of these lifts. Try to stay, don't go into the 5-rep range too much, stay a little bit closer to the 10-rep range, try to use a little bit more time under tension, use a little bit slower technique so that there's the muscle under tension for at least 40 seconds per set, and make sure that you're combining this with some good quality isolation movements, because you want to affect as many muscle fibers as possible and get some isolation.
Awesome.